It happened on a Tuesday. Not the kind of day history remembers, but the kind that carves itself into someone's bones. The courtyard was full. Students lingering before the bell, laughter echoing against brick walls, the usual chaos of adolescence. Mina, with her second-hand backpack and duct-taped shoes, walked through the center with her head down. And beside her, like always, was Rusty. He didn't wear a collar. He didn't need one. His fur was matted, ears notched, and one eye slightly clouded. He looked like something dragged in by a storm, but he walked with quiet purpose, never ahead, never behind, always beside her. That's when Zane saw him. Tall, loud, the kind of boy who thought cruelty was currency. He grinned at his friends. Watch this. He didn't hesitate. He didn't warn. He just reared back and kicked. Rusty yelped, a sharp, startled sound that sliced through the laughter. Mina dropped her bag and fell to her knees. Rusty staggered but didn't growl, didn't snap. He looked up and locked eyes with Zane. Something passed in that glance. Not pain, not fear, recognition. Zane stepped back, uneasy for a reason he couldn't name. And then the laughter faded. Not because of what had happened, but because Rusty stood up. Not limping, not retreating. He simply stood, still and square, chest forward, ears alert, as if waiting for a command. As if he'd done this before. Only, Mina saw the full shift. In that moment, Rusty wasn't a stray. He was a soldier. And something told her. This wasn't the first battlefield he'd survived. Rusty wasn't supposed to be there. Not in a schoolyard. Not in a town like theirs. Not in the quiet orbit of a girl like Mina. And yet, he had arrived. Wordless, wounded, and unshakably loyal. He had appeared 6 weeks before the kick. Mina had found him behind the dumpster of a closed-down diner, huddled in the shadows, like he was guarding memories no one wanted. She didn't scream or run. She simply sat, 10 feet away, and shared her sandwich. Rusty hadn't moved at first. But when she returned the next day, and the next, he started to follow. Just far enough to keep her in view. Mina never questioned it. Some things didn't need explaining. She named him Rusty because of his coat. Burnt copper under the grime, like something once beautiful left out in the rain. But it was more than his fur. There was something rusted in the way he moved. Precise, efficient, like a machine that remembered its old purpose even as the world forgot it. He never barked, never begged, never chased squirrels, or reacted to thrown balls like normal dogs. He simply observed. Watched the world with the kind of focus that made you feel like he was cataloging danger levels, exits, possible outcomes. It wasn't long before others noticed. Mr. Rivera, the janitor, said, "That dog don't blink. Gives me the chills." Coach Thomas added, "He sits like my old squad mates before deployment." But it was the town's retired sheriff, Hank Coyle, who stopped Mina one afternoon and asked, "Where'd you find that mutt?" "Behind the diner," she answered. Coyle crouched down and whistled softly. Rusty didn't move. He simply stared. "Seen that look before," Coyle muttered. "I had a German shepherd like him back in Iraq. Used to sit just like that. Wouldn't move till I said clear." Mina didn't know what to say. But later that night she Googled. Military dogs, posture stillness, alertness, obedience instinct. She found videos, articles, footage of dogs leading units, alerting soldiers to hidden dangers, standing over fallen comrades. One video hit her hard. A dog that looked eerily like Rusty stood motionless during a flag-folding ceremony, while taps played. She stared at the screen, then turned to the bundle curled at her feet. Rusty lifted his head, and for the first time, she asked softly, "Were you someone's soldier?" He blinked once, and went back to sleep. As the days passed, more patterns emerged. Rusty would stop at intersections and wait for Mina to cross first. He'd nudge her away from loud engines, refuse to enter crowded spaces. He hated fireworks. Not just with fear, he growled at them. Then one afternoon, Mina was walking past the park when a car backfired behind them. Rusty dropped flat to the ground in an instant, pulling Mina with him by the hoodie sleeve. She hit the grass, startled. Rusty stood slowly, scanning the perimeter. Mina's heart raced. That wasn't panic. That was training. She looked at him, suddenly sure. This dog has seen war. She started asking questions. At the vet clinic, the shelter, even the town's dog warden. No one claimed Rusty. He had no chip, no collar, no registered breed. But one assistant, Haley, offered to help. I can run a genetic scan. Sometimes we get matches through old military logs. A week later, she called Mina in. It's unofficial, Haley warned, but there's something weird. Rusty's DNA showed signs of cross-training. German Shepherd mix, military bloodline, strong indicators of formal conditioning. And one thing more, a tattoo. Faded, hidden beneath layers of scar tissue on his inner ear. K9-54B. Serial numbers didn't lie. Rusty had belonged to someone once, someone in uniform. Mina didn't tell anyone. She didn't want the government taking him back. Didn't want strangers in suits and badges and gloves deciding where he belonged. Because she already knew. He belonged beside her. Not just because he protected her. Because they had the same kind of broken. She carried grief like a whisper, from a father she never knew. He carried silence like armor, from battles he never left. And together, they simply walked. Rusty never asked to be saved. But somehow he had been. And in turn he was saving her. Every single day. After the kick, something in the air around Zane shifted. At first it was subtle. His bike tire blew out on the way home. Then, he stepped on a rusty nail and limped for 3 days. He tripped during a game and scraped his chin across the pavement. Small things. Coincidences, he told himself. But coincidences don't stalk your shadow. Zane began to feel watched. At school, he could sense eyes on him, not from people, from corners, from silence, from low places near the lockers. One day he glanced over his shoulder and thought, just for a second, he saw a copper tail disappearing around the corner. He tried to laugh it off. It's just that dumb mutt, he said to his friends. Still following me around like it's got something to prove. But they didn't laugh. Because they'd seen Rusty too. And they remembered the way he stood up after the kick. It wasn't just Zane's nerves. Rusty started showing up where he wasn't supposed to. Outside the gym, near the skate park, behind the gas station where Zane hung out after school. Always at a distance. Never barking, never growling. Just watching. And when Zane noticed him, Rusty would simply lock eyes and sit. Still, silent, like a judgment passed down from something ancient. Zane started sleeping with his light on. His dreams filled with growls that weren't quite growls, eyes that glowed without light. His grades slipped, his temper shortened. Teachers noticed. So did his mother. You look like you've seen a ghost, she said, tousling his hair. Zane didn't answer. Because maybe he had. Maybe the ghost had a name. And a scarred ear. Then came the phone call. The school principal summoned Zane's mother in. There had been reports. About what? She asked. About a dog. Following your son. Growling at students. Causing discomfort. But when they asked Zane, he only shrugged. It's not my dog. The counselor leaned forward. Maybe not. But it seems like it thinks you belong to it. That night, Zane took a different route home. Cut through alleys, doubled back. Rusty didn't follow. But the next morning, someone had clawed deep gouges into the fence behind the school. 4 lines, precise, parallel, measured. Then came the breaking point. It was a Friday. Gym class. Zane's team had just lost a relay race. Frustrated, humiliated, Zane lashed out at a younger kid, shoved him to the ground. The boy hit the track hard, started to cry. Zane didn't offer a hand. He turned and froze. Rusty was on the field. No one saw how he got there. 1 second the space was empty. The next, the dog was there. Still. Staring. Coach Thomas blew the whistle. "Whose dog is that?" But no one moved. Because Rusty wasn't looking at the coach. He was looking at Zane. Zane's throat tightened. Rusty took 1 step forward. Just one. And that was enough. Zane ran. After that day, something in Zane cracked. He stopped mocking others, stopped sneering, stopped trying to be the center of attention. Instead, he kept his head down, watched his words, watched the corners, watched the shadows. Then came the storm. A literal one. Thunder. Lightning. Sirens in the distance. The school was on lockdown. A security alert. Doors shut. Students gathered. Panic in the air. And Zane, somehow, ended up locked alone in the supply room. The lights flickered. The wind howled. Then, a creak. The doorknob turned. Zane backed into the shelves, breathing hard. And then Rusty stepped in. Not charging, not growling, just walking in, slow and quiet. He looked at Zane, and then turned his back, facing the door, guarding. That's when Zane heard it. A scuffle outside. Voices. Unfamiliar. One of them angry, another panicked. Zane crouched. Rusty stayed rooted. After a minute, the voices faded. Rusty looked over his shoulder. Their eyes met. And for the first time, Zane whispered, "Thank you." Rusty didn't respond. Just sat. And waited. Until the all-clear bell rang. Zane never told anyone what happened in that room. But the next day, he left a note in Mina's locker. It had no name. Just 3 words. "I'm sorry. Truly." And taped to it was a dog biscuit. The storm had been coming all day. Not just the weather, though the sky had been sulking since morning, low and heavy, like it was carrying more than just rain. Something else churned underneath. The electricity in the air, the unease in the hallways, the way teachers kept glancing at their phones during class. Mina had noticed. So had Rusty. That morning, he'd refused to sit by the school gate as usual. Instead, he lingered near the East Wing entrance, pacing once or twice before settling under the awning. It was the only time he'd ever broken routine. Mina had bent down beside him. Something wrong? Rusty hadn't moved. Just watched. By lunchtime, the storm had reached the edge of town. Thunder cracked loud enough to rattle windows. The principal came on the intercom, voice tight. "All students, please report to your designated safety areas. This is not a drill." Lockdown. The school shifted instantly. Teachers directed students into classrooms. Doors were locked. Blinds drawn. Phones silenced. Mina ended up in the art room with a dozen others, huddled behind overturned tables. Zane didn't make it. He'd been in the hallway, headed to the bathroom when the announcement rang out. The nearest door had slammed shut before he reached it. Alone. He turned and ran. Through corridors now echoing with the eerie stillness of lockdown protocol. He tried the gym. Locked. The cafeteria. Locked. Finally, he shoved open the supply closet next to the AV room and ducked inside. It was pitch black. Dusty. Cramped. He held his breath and waited. 15 minutes passed, then 20. Every sound outside made him flinch. Dripping pipes. Wind howling through vents. A distant bang. Maybe thunder. Maybe not. His heart wouldn't slow down. Then, a footstep. Heavy. Purposeful. Closer. Zane backed into the shelf, knocking over a stack of old DVD players. The crash echoed. He froze. Another step. Then the knob rattled. Zane scrambled to wedge a mop handle across the door. Silence. Then, a low growl, but not angry. familiar. Rusty. Zane exhaled a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. A second later, the door opened just enough to reveal the copper snout, the notched ears, the one-eyed stare. Rusty slid inside like a shadow. He didn't look at Zane. He turned to face the door and sat, guarding. Zane didn't speak, didn't move. He didn't need to. Rusty was enough. Outside, something else was happening. The lockdown hadn't been for weather alone. Down the road, a stolen car had crashed. 2 men fled into the woods behind the school, armed. The police were sweeping the perimeter. Inside, the school remained silent. But not everyone inside was safe. Mina heard it first. A metallic clatter down the hallway. She looked at the teacher. He shook his head. Stay still. Rusty wasn't with her. That was the worst part. She didn't feel protected. She felt exposed. Outside the room, heavy footsteps passed. Not police boots. Too slow. Too careful. Everyone held their breath. The handle jiggled. Locked. A shadow moved past the crack beneath the door. Then silence. In the supply room, Zane heard it too. Rusty stood, ears alert. He stepped toward the door. Zane reached out. No, don't. Rusty paused, then turned, sat back down. Zane realized the dog wasn't afraid. He was choosing to stay, to protect. The hours passed slowly. Eventually, the all-clear was given. Doors unlocked, students trickled out. But when the police checked the school, they found something else. Near the west wing, a crowbar discarded near a utility hatch. Footprints. Fresh. Someone had tried to break in, or had never left, but hadn't made it far. Because right beside the hatch was something stranger. Deep scratches in the tile. 4 lines. Parallel. As if someone, or something, had drawn a line and dared them to cross it. Rusty emerged from the building beside Zane. Students pointed, whispered. Zane ignored them. He walked up to Mina, held out a folded piece of paper. She opened it. 1 sentence, written in his shaky handwriting. He didn't protect me because I deserved it. He did it because that's who he is. Mina looked at him. For the first time, she smiled. That night, the town wrote a letter to a K9 Memorial Foundation to tell them about a dog without a nameplate, without a handler, but with a history that refused to die, and a heart that never stopped serving. They asked for recognition, a medal, a name. But Rusty didn't need any of it, because he already had Mina. And, strangely now, he had Zane. And in a world where cruelty was often loudest, Rusty's silence was the loudest vow of all. The Monday after the lockdown felt quieter, as if the air itself remembered what had happened. Students filed into the building slower than usual, voices hushed, glances more meaningful. Rumors had spread, but few people knew the full story. Rusty sat beside the school gate, just like before. But something about him was different now. Not in posture, he was still tall and still, but in presence. He wasn't just Mina's dog anymore. He belonged to all of them, even Zane, especially Zane. He approached Mina just before the first bell. No audience, no swagger. Just him, carrying something wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. A collar. Leather. Old, but carefully cleaned and polished. Rusty's name engraved by hand. I made it, Zane said, barely above a whisper. I thought he deserved one. Mina looked at the collar, then at him. You didn't have to. I did. They stood in silence. Rusty, sensing the moment, stepped forward. Zane crouched. For the first time, Rusty allowed it. Zane clipped the collar around his neck, and something shifted between them. Not forgiveness. Something older. Respect. From that day forward, Zane changed. He sat in the back of class, spoke less, listened more. He volunteered for cleanup duty, helped a student pick up spilled books. He didn't brag about the lockdown, didn't mention what Rusty had done. He didn't have to. Others saw. Rusty followed Mina still, but now, occasionally, he walked beside Zane too. One afternoon, they sat on the school steps together. Mina doodled in her notebook. Zane watched Rusty. "He's not just a dog," Zane said. "I know," Mina replied. "I used to think I was strong, but I've never stood still like him. Never stood for anything." "You can start now," the school counselor noticed. So did the principal. They asked Zane if he'd speak at the next school assembly. He said yes. The gym was packed. Students murmured until Zane stepped on stage. He cleared his throat. "I want to tell you about a mistake," he began, "and a dog who didn't hold it against me." He told the story, not of the kick, not of the guilt, but of the night in the supply room. How Rusty came in. How he stood watch. How he didn't move. How he didn't leave. He ended with one line. "Sometimes we're saved not because we're worth it, but because someone chooses to believe we could be." When he walked off stage, no one clapped immediately. They stood. Mina at the front. Rusty beside her. Eyes gleaming. Tail still. But head held high. In the weeks that followed, other students opened up. One by one. A girl who had been bullied came to thank Rusty. A boy who'd never spoken in front of the class gave a poem dedicated to the dog who waited. The school created a program, the Rusty Circle, for anyone who needed a place to feel safe. No judgment, just quiet company. Rusty sat in every meeting, never barked, never left. And in his silence, kids found their voices. One evening, Zane and Mina took Rusty to the hill overlooking the town. Sunset blazed behind them. Zane reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Inside, a medal. Simple. Bronze. Etched with 4 words. Service without condition. Always. He pinned it to Rusty's collar. Rusty didn't react, but his tail brushed against Zane's leg. A thank you. Or maybe an understanding. The days grew colder. Not suddenly, not cruelly, but gently, as if the world was preparing to let go of something. The leaves turned copper, the wind whispered earlier in the evenings, and the sky stayed gray a little longer each morning. Rusty began to slow down. His steps, once precise and sure, grew measured. He no longer sprinted to the gate. Instead, he walked beside Mina at a steady pace. He no longer stood vigil for hours. Instead, he rested beneath the oak tree by the school entrance, eyes still sharp, ears still alert, but his breathing heavier. Everyone noticed, and no one spoke of it. Not Mina, not Zane, not the students or teachers. Because no one wants to speak about the end when someone you love is still here. One morning, Mina arrived at school early. The sun hadn't risen. She sat with Rusty under the oak tree, blanket over her knees, sketchbook in hand. Rusty rested his head on her foot. She drew him quietly. She had dozens of drawings now, of Rusty sitting, Rusty watching, Rusty with Zane, Rusty with kids from the Rusty Circle. But this one felt different. She drew every line slowly, every scar, every fold of fur, as if the act of sketching could somehow hold him here longer. When the first bell rang, she whispered, "I'll be right back." Rusty opened one eye, then closed it. That afternoon, the school counselor asked Zane and Mina to meet her in the office. On the table was a padded box, and beside it, a letter. Zane opened the envelope. It was from the National K-9 Veterans Foundation. To Rusty, K-954. B. For bravery beyond service, for loyalty beyond death. Inside the box was a medal, gold, etched with a single phrase. In silence, he served. Zane looked at Mina. She nodded. "I think it's time." The school organized the ceremony for a Friday. Not mandatory. Not formal. But no one skipped it. The auditorium was full. Rusty sat center stage on a small blanket. Mina beside him. Zane to her right. The principal stood at the podium. There are guardians in every story, she began. Heroes who fight, who protect. But some heroes don't roar. They don't carry weapons. They just stay. She paused. And today, we honor one who never left his post. Rusty didn't understand the words. But he felt the room, the reverence, the stillness. Mina leaned in, kissed his forehead, and placed the medal gently against his chest. Rusty blinked slowly, and let his head fall into her lap. That night, Rusty slept beside Mina's bed, his breathing slow, rhythmic. Zane had stayed for dinner, helped wash the dishes, even offered to sleep on the couch, just in case. Around midnight, Mina woke with a start. The house was quiet. Too quiet. She leaned over the edge of the bed. Rusty wasn't moving. She slipped to the floor, knelt beside him, and placed a hand on his chest. Still. Warm. But still. She didn't cry at first. She held him, brushed the fur between his ears, whispered, "You can rest now." Zane came in quietly. He didn't speak. He sat beside her. Together, they stayed there until morning. The funeral was small, just like Rusty would have wanted. The town offered the hill behind the school, beneath the oak tree, his tree. They buried him with his medal, his collar, and Mina's drawing. Students brought flowers. Teachers wrote notes. Kids from the Rusty circle left toys and letters. Zane stood to speak, but couldn't. Mina took his hand. Together, they read the line engraved on his headstone. He didn't protect us, because we earned it. He protected us, because he chose to. Spring came slowly. The oak bloomed late. Mina visited every day after school, sat by the stone, talked about her drawings, her classes, her grief. Zane joined her most days. Sometimes they sat in silence. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they said nothing at all. The world moved on. But Rusty remained. In memory. In sketches. In a bronze statue the school unveiled a month later. Rusty, seated, head lifted, tail curved gently around his legs. It stood near the front steps. Students passed by every day. Some saluted. Some whispered, "Thank you." Others just sat beside it for a moment when they needed strength. Underneath the statue, a plaque read, "In silence, he served. Rusty, K954, befriend, guardian, soldier." Years later, Mina stood beside the statue once more. Zane by her side. She held a sketchbook in one hand, and in the other, a leash. At the end of it, a puppy. New, curious, clumsy. But when he looked up at the statue, he sat, still, watching. And Mina smiled. "Let me tell you a story," she said. And she began. Again.